Hello out there. My name is Laulu Akonde and you are on to Inside Sources. First, here is your take edition. Today, we review some of the feedback and comments on Inside Sources from our viewers, mainly from social media platforms, especially YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, that is X. The first one is about the edition featuring Mr. Moghalu, the former national auditor of APC, and analyst Baba Yusuf and Mr. Martin Oloja. He says, Nigerians are tired of bad policies. This is coming from Paul Oga. Paul Oga says, these are great Nigerians, and we are sick and tired of bad policies. Next one is titled, Tinubu flying around the world when Nigeria is at the brink. It's from Mr. IY3LD, a Google account. It says, Nigeria is almost at the brink, but unfortunately, the Aso Rock monarch, that's what he calls it, is flying around the world, courting relevance. The next one is titled, End Opacity in the Oil Sector. It's coming from Chidi Ebere. He says, there is too much opaque exchanges in the oil sector of the economy. The corruption in the system won't allow transparency to prevail in the oil market economy in Nigeria. Now we move to another edition that featured the former Minister of Health, Professor Nwabuchi, and a number of our other experts. The first one says, devaluation caused our economic mess. This is from Andy Prudent. He says, the devaluation of the Naira caused the problem we are today facing. And that's simple. Had it been that President Tinubu did not devalue the Naira after the removal of the petrol subsidy, we wouldn't have had it this bad. That's his own view. The next one is on the flooding. It says, efficient infrastructure to the rescue regarding flooding. This is coming from Mr. Heritage Innovation. It says, we should significantly improve infrastructure and protect vulnerable places in Nigeria so that we can have efficient basic infrastructure. That once we do that, we will be able to deal with the impact of climate change in Nigeria without it resulting into a disaster. Next one says, Tinubu has shown that he can't fix Nigeria. This is coming from Maxwell Bernard. Maxwell says President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has proved that he couldn't fix the Nigerian economy and the insecurity. He is a tax collector and not an economic builder and developer. Where I say that he still have about 3 years. Give him a chance. The next one says Tinubu should do his job. No excuses. This is coming from Kingsley. Kingsley says Tinubu should solve our problems. Now, he said that he was capable of solving the problem. That was why he aspired to lead. I'm sure that the president is listening. The next one is a comment on my take in the edition that featured Mr. Farotimi. It says, retired generals' concerns legitimate. And this is coming from Delketeros. Our retired generals were right to have raised their concerns about the condition of the people and the sufferings that is going on. Isn't it absurd as they watch a civilian government being much more dictatorial and autocratic than their times as military generals? This is the view of this guy, but I disagree entirely with you. That even though, yes, they are patriotic to be concerned, but my point is that they should do it in an open fashion. We don't want all these secret meetings for which we have no communiques. So that opens the whole place to all kinds of speculations that we don't need. Let's go on to the next one. The next comment is on the edition that featured Mr. Kanu Agabi, former Attorney General. This is from Mr. Foremost Network. It says, the judiciary has no excuse. It says, overworking is not an excuse for the corruption. This is the biggest problem when you try to rationalize or justify the abuse of trust. I think it's responding to the argument of the former Attorney General. The next one says, a laughable irony, and this is coming from Enebeli Christian. Enebeli Christian says, others are fighting for their citizens. Nigerian government is fighting for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. Nigeria, a country that is under terrorism and that is fighting severe hunger. Now, I also have a slight disagreement with you because our current problems should not be the determinant of our destiny. Nigeria has a way bigger destiny than what we have today. And then there are a number of general comments, coming from our viewers. This is on the Seme border closure. It says there's an after effect of the Seme border closure. This is coming from Okechukwu Arinze. It says Seme border closure, the after effect. Okechukwu is saying that nobody pushed Nigerian trade to Cotonou. Rather, the closing of the Seme border encouraged local businesses to import directly to Benin instead of traveling to Lagos to buy goods. Nigeria is now a local champion. Well, don't put Nigeria down. The next one is about the oil sector corruption. And this is coming from the upcoming strategist on Instagram. Upcoming strategist says, is there any president that dealt with corruption in the oil sector before? And if that is true, how come the problem of corruption managed to come back? Well, that's a good question. The next one says, government is not empathic. And this is coming from Kehinde Adefulu, I believe, from X. Kehinde says, the only discipline the government wants from Nigerians is to face the severe hardship and bear the pain, while they remain indisciplined to corruption and extravagant spending. He concludes that politicians can't subdue corruption in the oil and gas sector as they are all beneficiaries of it. Oh, well, that's a very tough one. Now, this is the last one. It says, is the president serious? And this is coming from Bemileke on X. He said, did you hear the president awarding national honors to Senator Akpabio, the Senate president, and Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, the Speaker of the House, in his Independence Day speech? Is that what the president should be using his time to talk to Nigerians to do? To be telling us how he's celebrating those folks? And if that was not bad enough, the speaker's people in the House, they are behaving as if the president even offended them by giving Akpabio the GCO head, but gave a CFR to the speaker. Kai, see our leaders. I think this is a nice place to stop. Inside Sources, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, as we continue our conversation on the future of our country, I have with me an eminent Nigerian, a pioneer broadcaster, former general manager of NTA, an astute politician, and one-time Nigeria's ambassador to the Philippines. I'd like to welcome Chief Yemi Farounbi to Inside Sources. Uncle, it's good to see you on Inside Sources.
Thank you so much, Laulu.
Very well, very well. So I want to start this way. I know that you were very close in Ibadan to Chief Bolage when he was governor and afterwards. And I knew all the hopes, that we all had for a great Nigeria, even in the 80s and the 90s. Chief, where do you think, what do you think has happened to that hope? If you look at where Nigeria is today, those expectations and the aspirations that people like you and Chief Bolage expressed and stood for, what do you think has happened to it today?
It's sad. We had a lot of hopes for Nigeria. We had a dream of a great country, a country that would be the greatest on the firmament of Africa, not only politically but also economically. We thought of a country where everybody would have access to affordable education. We thought of a country where each one would teach one, where there will be no degree of literacy, where adult literacy will have wiped up illiteracy in all ways. We thought of a country where people will have employment, will have gainful employment. We thought of a country where it will be easy to stay healthy, where it will be easy to go to the hospital and take free medical services. We talk of a country where it will be difficult for you to access drugs to maintain your state of health. We talk of a country where the drift from the rural to the urban will have stopped. because we're thinking of what we call concept, where in each town they will have access to electricity, good education, good health facilities, and there'll be no need for anybody to chase the bright city life in the big towns. That was our dream. And unfortunately, it's still our dream. That was the whole concept of optimum concept. Each community will operate at the optimum. And within each community, whatever you can find in Abuja or in Lagos, in any urban center, people will have access to it. That was our dream. We were thinking of the optimum concept in which every community will have an optimal relationship, all the facilities, all the amenities that you find in the city. So there will be no need for anybody to drift from the rural or the suburban to the urban communities. The whole idea was that all Nigerians, irrespective of what they are, the amenities you have in the cities, you will also have in the rural and urban areas.
So I mean, very, very fascinating. So what do you think was responsible, for the truncation of this, in your view, Dr. Farumi?
Well, a number of things. The first was, of course, the 16 years interregnum caused by the military. I mean, that was 1883 to 1999. That altered the composition of the society itself. It altered the approach to politics. It started what I call the vulgar monetization of the political system. It turned politics from being the leaders being the representative of the people, the leaders being the choices of the people. It turned the leaders to become those who had the largest war chests or who had the largest bank account. All of that happened in that 16 years. And of course, there was also an alteration of the texture of politics. We drifted from ideological political foundation into what I would call politics of convenience. For example, there is no party since 1999 that have been rooted on any ideology whatsoever. The party that had captured or that had won election had been an amalgam of various political shades and coloration. Take, for example, the PDP. What united the PDP was that they wanted the military to go. And when you look at all those who formed the PDP, the political associations that formed the PDP, there wasn't any common ideological understanding among them. Even when the APC took over from the PDP, all of them who amalgamated had only one common mission. We've had enough of PDP. We want to be there. So it wasn't an ideological replacement. It was, what would I call it, a vote gathering mechanism. These two factors led to what we have today. The political recruitment is not the best. We are not putting our best forward. We are not, sometimes, from the point of view of electorate, they are not able to differentiate between 6 and half a dozen, because the political parties, they've lost internal democracy, they are not presenting the best, they are looking for the person who has the money, they are looking for the person who has the muscle, they are not looking for the person who has the talent, or who has the intellect, or who has a correct vision for their community or for the constituencies. They are not looking for people who has competencies, who are capable of delivering on whatever they say they want to do. They are not looking for people who are competent to be able to meet the aspirations and the expectations of the people. They are not looking for people of character any longer. We are just playing politics to win. And that had been the abrupt termination of the dream of many of us of a great Nigeria that will be ahead of all other nations in Africa, and who today should be competing as a major player on the world scene.
Very, very interesting, you know, almost depressing. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. So lately, we had in the news a gathering of 3 former military rulers in Minna. General Obasanjo, General Babangida, and General Abdulsalami. And they were commenting about the state of the nation. Well, this wasn't a transparent meeting. We didn't even know what they said, but there were a lot of insinuations. Do you hold some of those former military rulers responsible for some of the dislocation that you have described, Dr. Farumbi?
Yes, in various degrees, they are. In their 16 years of the second intervention or 13 years of the first intervention, they interfere with the decision-making system. They reduce the legislature to nothingness. You know, in the military regime, you don't have legislative capacity. The legislature is combined in the executive in the military ruler. So for 28 years, Nigeria had no experience whatsoever in legislative management of our affairs. And you can see that in the incompetence that is displayed most of the time by the National Assembly. In the fact that the National Assembly most of the time, they see the president, or even the state assembly, they see the governor as a kabiyesi that cannot be contradicted. The concept of a counterbalancing between the legislature and the executive was lost during the military, so we don't have the experience. We have the experience of an executive, we had the experience of a judiciary that was also subservient to the military executive. We had a military executive that ruled in a centralized form that aborted the concept of true federalism, the concept of the federative units being the counterbalance to the center. All of this was lost in the 28 years of military rule. And then, of course, some of the vulgar monetization of the political system came during their rules. Some of the centralization of power in the executive. They became what my people would call apashewa. People would talk and nobody can contradict. All of this were carried over from the military. And you see the governors behaving like if they were still military governors. Or even sometimes the president behaving as if he's still a military head of state. Making pronouncement without reference to the National Assembly. Making pronouncement without reference to the Council of State. Making pronouncement without reference to the Economic Council. All of these are carried over from the military regime of these 3 giants that met in Minna.
So, Dr. Farumbi, how do we still keep this analysis? So, what you have said is that the kind of politics that we have now is essentially because of these things that happen, the role of the military, the vulgarization of the system, as you said. But since 1999, up until now, we've had politicians, civilian politicians that have been in charge. How long more are we going to have a civilian experience that cannot be transformed to something that looks more democratic? I'm saying, what's your own prognosis? How do we get out of this quagmire?
The first thing that we must tackle is that political parties, yes, must be an assemblage of people who share common views, but these common views must be ideological in terms of politics, in terms of economics, in terms of developing the society. They cannot just be coming together because they want to capture power. The essence of power is to serve the people. Man must be the common element. Man must be the unit of development. And that is why in a democracy, the common denominator is people, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Now, when parties are formed just to enthrone certain people, either as a result of entitlement or as a settlement for whatever they think they have done, then it is not right. We have to climb back into the right path. That is the first thing. The second thing is that those political parties must begin to have internal democracy. You cannot have a situation in which candidates are nominated by only one person or by one clique in a very opaque fashion. I mean, let's make a comparison. Look at the nomination system in America, either the Democratic or the Republican Party. Look at even the nomination of the prime ministership in the UK. Look at the number of people who are involved in the process. The common man is represented. Across the strata of the society, they are represented. But what do we have? Sometimes in the PDP, in the last election, it was under 1,000 delegates. In the APC, it was 2,200 delegates. Can you compare that with 168,000 or so, or the caucuses or the primary that you plan? We must open up the system so that the best people can come. Third is that we must demonetize the system. I know politics is a very expensive thing, but in other countries you spend money on explaining your viewpoint, explaining what you stand for, explaining what you want to do for the society, carrying the people along so that they can understand your vision, so that they can buy into your mission. But what do we spend money for here? To buy votes, to buy the leaders, to buy the security agencies, to buy the election management agencies. So we are spending money on the wrongest of things. We are not spending money rightly in politics for the things that can give us the best political system. So we must look at our political recruitment system, from the councillor to the chairmanship, to those who even serve as commissioners, those who serve as board chairmen. We must begin to think of what are they bringing to the table in terms of intellect, what are they bringing to the table in terms of competence, in terms of expertise, in terms of knowledge. This is about the only country I know where when you elect a president, he asked various arms of his party to make nomination. I know that in America that we copy the presidential system for. When you are elected as a president, you are going to look for consultancy firm. I want an economist that has a fiscal approach to economy, or I want somebody who has a monetary system. That's what you do. I want an agricultural economist that is going to look at food production, or I want an agricultural economist that is going to look at cash crop production. That's what you do. You do not put people in position because they have assisted you to win an election. George Bush Sr., president, he said those who help you win election cannot help you run government. Because the running of government has to do with competence, has to do with expertise, has to do with knowledge. And that's the one thing we don't seem to care about in this country. We think about settling people who have helped us. We think about giving position to people who think they are entitled to it because they are political manipulators. We must begin to separate the process of campaign from the process of governance. I think these are things that we can do, and it is doable. And the electorate must also stop demanding for money. When you sell your vote for 15,000, you are selling 4 years. That is not what Nigeria used to be. We used to contribute money to politicians. I know we used to donate to Bola Ige. We used to donate to Shifa Olowo. I know that we used to donate to Azikwe, Okpara, Abubakar, and all of them. Today, you expect the politician to spend his money. You expect him to sell his houses, to sell his property, so that he can be able to serve you. That is a wrong thing. Nigeria must move away from all of that. For us to be able to put ourselves on the right path, these are things that we must do.
Very, very, very exciting reforms you spoke about there. But I like to, change the course of the discussion a little bit. So you are from the Southwest, Dr. Farumi, and like I said, you were there in the Second Republic with people like Chibola Ige. And even I remember, that you are the leader of the Network for Democracy in Ibadan, towards the ending of the military rule. Now, the PDP was formed, in 1999, produced a Southwest candidate and became president. But the mainstream of Southwest political leaders did not consider the candidate then, who was General Obasanjo. They didn't consider him to be a mainstream Southwest politician. It was as if he was imposed from outside. But guess what? In 2013, 2014, President Buhari and current President Tinubu came together with other people, formed the APC, okay, which was considered to be the real progressive movement in Nigerian politics. And then, of course, they got power. You have described the process. Now, my question to you is that, so that alliance between Buhari and Tinubu produced a politician. First of all, it went to the north, which was Buhari between 2015 and 2023. But then it ultimately produced a mainstream Southwest politician, in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president of Nigeria today. So my point is that, so now we have a mainstream Southwest politician as the president of Nigeria. With the way things are today, what do you think is the outcome of that alliance of the Southwest and the North? As a matter of fact, more of the Northwest, but let's say the North. What is the outcome? How do you assess the outcome? Has it actually produced the kind of progressive politics and the impact on the people that many people had expected we come from a progressive alliance of that sort? What do you say?
Yes, I think the greatest mistake is to say we have a progressive movement in power. There have been no progressive movement. An alliance between the CNC, the AAPP, some factions of PDP, and ACN cannot be called to be a progressive movement. There are progressive individuals there, but there are certainly ultra-conservative also individuals there. So how do you average and call it progressive? If you go back to the old concept of progressive that was promulgated by Professor Woodrow Wilson, who was the American president, I think, between 1914 and 1918, the concept of progressiveness is not static. It keeps on changing from time to time. And that is why if you take Awolowo or Okpara as a specimen of a progressive individual, when he was starting the action group, he called it freedom for all. So freedom for all, we must have freedom from British rule, we must have freedom from poverty and ignorance. By the time he became UPN, he was ideologically stronger, he was growing. He had grown from just a periphery, what we call it, benefit from all of us, into specific ideas, concepts about how to change the society. So what I'm trying to say is that the word progressive has no static dimension. It keeps on progressing depending on the status of the society. If you go and read about what was considered progressive in 1918, 1914, 18 in America, you'll be shocked. They are ultra-conservative. So, the progressive movement produced President Buhari. The progressive movement produced President Tinubu, and President Tinubu promised that he will continue where President Buhari left off. The one thing that I had always known a relationship or an alliance between the Northwest and Southwest will give is a measure of stability. To keep the Southwest out of the loop will create instability. Because when you look in terms of voting capacity, in terms of population, you're going to find that the Northwest and the Southwest are the most two populous zones. So if you have a marriage of the two of them, the chances are that you're going to have stability. But that doesn't mean you will get progress. Progress is a function of an individual who is leading. It is not a function of a movement. It depends on who's leading the movement. What is their own understanding of left of the center? Are they right of the center or left of the center? What is their own understanding of the structural problems that are foundational to this country? What is their own understanding of even sheer economics? We're talking about things like subsidy, things like no subsidy, things like hunger, things that are no longer hunger. What is their progressive solution to it? They looked, for example, at the distribution of the soil patterns in Nigeria. Have they looked at the kind of product that can be planted on these soils? Have they looked at the kind of fertilizer that can be adapted to this soil? Have they looked at the type of irrigation that can be done? You know, progressiveness is not static. It has to keep on moving. You have to look at the fact, for example, that at the time to be progressive, you have to be a Marxist. You have to be a communist. You have to be a Stalinist. Or you have to be a Leninist. But we know all of that had evaporated. So to be progressive now, in my view, is to be committed to the welfare of the people, to be committed to the socio-economic comfort of the people, to be able to provide food for the people, to be able to provide jobs for the people, to be able to provide what you need in terms of electricity, in terms of water, in terms of good road, in terms of good education. You cannot be running a progressive government and the best of your brains are migrating in a Japa syndrome outside Nigeria. You cannot be having a second slave trade wave, and say you have a progressive government. No, absolutely. We need progressive individuals who are committed, and Shifaolo defined it as this. A progressive government is that seeks for the optimum for the maximum number of people. Are we seeking for the optimum for the maximum number of people? Are we looking for the best for the people? Are the roads the best for the people? Are we looking for rail lines the best for the people? Are the port structure the best for the people? Are we making electricity common to all when you have band A, band B, band C, band D? Isn't that a discrimination in a country where all men ought to be created equal? So I think a marriage between the North and the South will always give stability. It will not translate to progressive economics or progressive economic development.
Very well said, Chief. Very well said. Now, let's talk about the stability a little bit. We've had, when this was before 2015, I think around 2009, up until now, we've had all kinds of very significant security problems, insecurity. Started with Boko Haram, and then metamorphosed into banditry, a lot of kidnapping and all of the sort. So even the stability, and I see your point, indeed, political stability, but we've also been dealing, although that is now beyond 2015, like I said, starting from around 2009, we've been dealing with terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and all shades of insecurity. My question to you, Dr. Faromi, is that what explains this and what is the way out in your own view?
Now let us start with the first major security instability we have, and that was Boko Haram. Boko Haram had three dimensions. There was economic Boko Haram, there was religious Boko Haram, and there was political Boko Haram. There were people who wanted to create instability because they were not in power. That was the political Boko Haram. Because they said this country will make ungovernable because they were not in power. There were indeed and in truth the Islamic Boko Haram, the religious Boko Haram. People who genuinely believe that if they assaulted other religious views, they would go to heaven and marry virgins and all of that. That was that, but they were in the minority. And there was the economic Boko Haram. These were people who had no job. These were people who had no food. These were people who had no houses to live. So there was a coalition of these three strands into what became Boko Haram. And there's no way you can tackle the three strands the same way because the causation factors are different. Then, of course, we had a problem we had in Libya. We had a problem of ISIS, which translated into the Islamic State of West African Province, which translated into the Islamic State of Greater Sahara. People who don't believe in fact that either Nigeria or Ghana or Dahomey or whatever you call them had a right to exist. That what we needed was a blanket omnibus Islamic State. There are those who are committed to that. They are the religious fanatics, and they keep on fighting. And if you accept that religion is the opium of the people, or that religion is a primitive belief, that people can do so many things in defense of religion. So you have that problem. But of course we have the people who take advantage of all of this to establish political dominance. People who opened our borders to allow for inflow of migrants who they thought will assist in creating political instability to aid their own political dominance. We also have this. So the problem has been that a lot of our political leaders really don't love Nigeria. And because they don't love Nigeria, because they are more interested in themselves, in satisfying either their ego, massaging their ego, or just getting power as a compensation for whatever they think they have done. When you have this kind of situation, then you're going to have the kind of problem that we have. That's why we're having instability. Hunger does not differentiate between ethnic nations. Poverty doesn't differentiate between religious divide. You are poor, you are poor. You are hungry, you are hungry. And the 132 multidimensionally poor people, according to the Bureau of Statistics, are not differentiated on the basis of religion. So we must begin as leaders not to look at all of this problem. What caused some of this problem? The original cause of this problem was the Unification Decree 34 of 1966 that seek to unify people of different cultural traits, cultural backgrounds, cultural approaches, and wanted to make them think alike. You don't do that. You cannot force a marriage. Over time, a husband and wife will become one. The soap and the leaf will become one. But it's going to be a process that is gradual. You cannot impose it. If our agricultural approach, for example, is shifting cultivation in some places, but if it is irrigation in some places, if it is cattle rearing in some places, you cannot impose the attribute, cultural attribute, agricultural attribute, accepting that culture calls over all of these things, either ideological, technological, agricultural, industrial approaches. And you want to make them become compulsory one, then you are going to have problems. So we must still go back to a situation in which the federating units are indeed federating units, in which the federating units have access to adequate funds to carry out responsibility that ought to be carried out at their level. A situation in which the center controls 52.8% of the revenue of this country, and they become a donatus, donating money at will, without reference perhaps to even National Assembly, without reference to any budgetary system, is not the right thing. We must get back to people being able to work and add value. When agriculture was the mainstay, we worked. They not worked and produced the groundnut pyramid. They produced the Sesame Street. They produced the sesame. They produced the cotton. Now all the textile industries, over 2,000 that we used to have, are producing the oil palm in the east. Nobody is producing the cocoa here. Nobody is even producing the yams, the cocoa yam, the beans, the tomatoes, the peppers. Everybody is dependent on what we come from crude oil. That is not right. We are adding up value to the crude oil process, but in the areas where we can add value, which is agriculture, which is industry, which is businesses, those are the areas we have left. You go to Lagos now, the Acme Road, where we used to have a lot of the textile industry, have become cathedrals for churches, not to produce goods any longer. So we have to look at the foundation of our problem. There's something wrong with our structure. There's something wrong with the approach of our people. There's something wrong with our over-dependence on independent goods. There's something wrong with the dollarization of our economy. Of course, our economy will become dollarized if we are going to keep on depending all of the time on imported goods. So we have to change all of this. There is a mental rebirth that we need, a mental re-engineering, so that we can begin to see ourselves as Nigerians, begin to work hard and accept that if you don't work, you don't deserve to eat. If you don't sweat, you don't deserve to eat. That is the truth.
Yeah. So Chief, just so we can properly guide the discussion. I know that you've touched on a lot of issues. I was gunning for the security aspect, which you did explain. But before we go further, so you raised a point about federating units. In your own view, are the states as it is today, those 36 states that we have today, are those the federating units indeed? Or, like others have argued, that these states, for the most part, are creations of the military. That there was no time when the Nigerian people properly, wanted these states, that these were military. That the federating units ought to be the ethnic nationalities that actually went into whatever it is that became Nigeria in 1914 and later.
Today, in our constitution, the state is the federating unit, but they are not. Absolutely, they were not created on the basis of any clearly well-defined. All those who have looked at Nigeria, Adachi Paulo or Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Anthony Nahoro, the movement of national reformation, all of those who have looked into Nigeria have identified the possibility of 8 to 11 federating units on the basis of linguistic and cultural affinity, and on the basis of geographical contiguity. But what have we had? We had 36 states that were created at the whim and the caprices of the military. If you have a son there, then you got a state. And when Gowon created 12 states, he had 6 in the north, he had 6 in the south. And he said that each of the states will have the powers of the region. That was what he said in 1967. But today, does any of the states have the power of the regions? No. The states are now battling the responsibilities of local government. Most of the responsibility of the state as federating units have been taken over by the center. The center has grown from 12 responsibilities as the responsibility of the center, they've grown into 68. So the states are just there. They are worse than they were even in the Third Republic. Most of the governors now live in Abuja, chasing after things that they ought to be pursuing ordinarily in their state. You have a Minister of Water Resources, you have a Minister of Livestock, you have a Minister of Agriculture, in a country where the Constitution says that the land is under the control of the state. You have a Ministry of Mines and Power, even though the land belongs to the state, but the minerals therein belong to the center. There are contradictions that you can't understand. So, and that is why people say we ought to sit down and have a negotiated consensus. Let us have a negotiated agreement on what ought to be and what ought not to be. I mean, why is it, for example, that Lagos State is still having 20 local governments since 1967? And the old Kano state have broken into new Kano and Jigawa state. Between the two of them, they have 80 local governments, simply because those who are in charge were some military people from those areas. You know, we have to take a look at some of these things so that justice can be done and it can be seen to have been done. I think it is important.
Okay. Well, I mean, thank you so much. Let's begin to wrap up, because of our time. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, I have seen quite a lot of movements, even talking about regions. I think a few days ago, we had the news that the National Assembly is also in the process of actually have the Southwest Commission. We now have the Northeast Commission. We have the Niger Delta Commission. And I think it seems as if we're going to have 6 commissions. Now, do you think that is an indication of where we are going? Are we going back to regionalism? Should we go back to the regions? Looking at what has happened with the states, some of which you've mentioned, is it going to be better if we actually go back to the regions? Or what's your own idea of restructuring?
Now, they are creating development commissions, which are federal agencies. Already we have liaisons between the federal government and those zones. In the days of Shagari, we had liaisons between the president and the states. And in the peculiar federal system we have, in which the local government is independent of the state, we are soon going to be having liaisons between the federal government and the local government. And I just laugh at all of this. I'm sure our Attorney General must have heard of something called the Dillon concept in America that talks about the relationship between the local government and the state. The local government is a baby that cannot be separated from the state, but we have done that. So we are creating more confusion in an attempt to give ourselves temporary conveniences. In my view, the states are not effective federating units because as they are, 36, they don't produce, they don't provide a counterbalance, any check on the federal government. The relationship between the state and the federal government has almost become between that of a headmaster and a class teacher. So I don't see true federalism from them. You need the federation unit to be a little bit more strengthened, to be able to run the economy almost near independently, the way Eastern Nigeria or Northern Nigeria could do what they were doing. After we know today that most of the industries you find in the entire North were the industry put there by Sardauna. Since he left, who has added anything? Nothing. So we have to be able to strengthen the subunits. I don't think the National Assembly is capable of giving us a restructuring. They are not interested. And I'm going to quote Chief Abiola in this. He said, there is nobody who sits down and destroys his own empire. The only person who has done that is our friend in South Africa, de Klerk, who voluntarily became a deputy president to Mandela. And the man in USSR, who dismantled USSR, who blocked Glasnost and Petrosoka. I don't see Nigeria being that selfless to be able to restructure Nigeria in a way that will reduce their empire. They are not likely to do that. So long as we don't restructure properly, and look at the ethnic nationalities as the podium on which the roof called Nigeria should rest, so long we will continue to have economic instability. There's no amount of economic reform that can give us what we want. I'm a student of the Southeast, the Asian tigers. All those Asian tigers became economic giants after a preliminary restructuring based on political realities of the country. If we don't look at our structure and look at the realities of our country, if everybody must keep on waiting for the crude oil that will come from wherever it comes from, and nobody wants to go to the farm, nobody wants to industrialize, nobody wants to do correct infrastructuring, then we will not get there. We have to strengthen the federative unit. The whole essence of government is that you put governance at the level that are nearest to the people. And it's good now that the states can generate electricity. In the past, it couldn't. I know the Southwest wanted to start its own railway through Odua in 2002, but they were not allowed because there is a law that says only federal government can do rail lines. I mean, there are things like that that we must look at. We must strengthen the federative unit, but we must rearrange the federative unit. They are not just Lilliputs in the hand of a giant.
So the president is has now been in office for I think about 15 or 16 months. There's a lot of hardship in the land. We had a protest, not too long ago. The subsidy has not been removed, and quite a lot of things. You've spoken to the local government autonomy, and so there are a lot of things. What is your own assessment of the state of the nation, and what will be your counsel to the incumbent president, if you were to get the opportunity to give him an advice?
If I had that opportunity, I'm going to ask him to look back at what he was. I'm going to ask him to look at the letter he wrote to Jonathan in 2012. I'm going to ask him to look at the cases that he took to Supreme Court on local government. I'm going to ask him, why is he ideologically somersaulting? Why is he appearing not to be the Tinubu that we knew? Why is it that he doesn't appear as the Tinubu that was committed to a restructuring of this country? A Tinubu that was interested in the sovereign national conference. A Tinubu that was committed to true federalism. I'm going to ask him what had happened. Can he be true to himself? Let him be himself. Let him be what he had said in the past. And I think that a lot of these problems that he's having will not be there. And of course, I will also tell him that he promised us a government of national competence. And I will ask him that in the name of all that is good, does he think he has a government of national competence? Does he think that the people he had assembled are the best in this country? They are the most competent hands to deal with what they have been asked to deal with? I will ask him to look even at his own media. Have they been projecting him rightly? What are the contradictions in what he says? I will ask him what is happening that there are so frequent policy changes. That doesn't seem like the Tinubu that I know. Policy changes, today you want to have a cyber tax, tomorrow it will be cancelled. Today you want to have an expatriate tax, in another week it will be cancelled. It has become difficult for anybody to even plan ahead because you are not even sure when they are going to somersault. It reminds me of one theorist, American theorist called Amitai Ezioni. He says we are behaving like a drunk. We don't know where we are going. We are staggering along. We stagger to the left, we stagger to the right. I will ask him to change his team, to look for the best. Those who help him translate whatever his dreams are for the greater good of Nigeria. People have been praising him for identifying the best of brains. I will ask him to go into that mode again and identify the better brains that are scattered all over Nigeria to help us restructure the economy, to help us restructure the country, to ensure that his government takes greater care of the common man, and that saying that there's nothing we can do, handing over as if there's no solution, is not him. It's not the him that I know. The him that I know will confront problems and find solutions to them. It is not with him that will go into China and say, what can we do? That is not the Tinubu that I know. Can he please come back to his original mode? Can he begin to identify the better people? And in the name of all that is good, look at his policy on subsidy.
Thank you so much, Chief Farobi. And I remember that I'm sure you're going to be turning 80 on October 1. Happy birthday to you, Dr. Farobi. You know, but you're not looking like somebody that is in the 80s, you know, except for your very gray beard, which has always been there. What's the secret? What's the secret of you sounding this robust, even at 80?
I think it's first God's grace. I have enormous grace of God on my hair. But the second thing is I have a commitment that we must leave this country better than we met it. This was the way we met it. And we must keep on doing whatever we can to see that the country gets better. Because I have, perhaps because Nigeria shows October 1 as Independence Day, I have a fanatical commitment to the overall development of this country. And so that keeps me going. Keeps me finding answers to problems, finding solutions to problems. I will never give up on Nigeria. By the sheer size of our population, the interaction within the 237 million people, the complexity imposed on us by the exposure of our people to outside Nigeria, I believe that Nigeria must change and Nigeria will change and that Nigeria will be better. So I plead with everybody to share October with me and believe that Nigeria will be better. And I want to talk to government. Don't abandon your origin. October 1 is your origin. Saturday, not May 29. Saturday, not July 12.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Yemi Farobi, for your contributions. Thank you for the insight that you have provided. And I agree with you that, you know, we will have a greater Nigeria. It's the reason why we have inside sources. And we will not give up. We will continue to talk about the issues, and hopefully Nigeria indeed will prevail. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Thank you, Laulu.
Thank you. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail. We believe it, and that is why we are here. And it will happen because we will not relent. My name is Laulu Akonde, and by the grace of God, I'll see you at the next edition. Thank you for watching.